Rodney Hilton Brown, a historian, collector. Could you tell our audience exactly about this auction and all these artifacts?
I'm the principal consignor to the auction. Out of 168 pieces, all but a dozen or so are from my War Museum collection. And I've decided to do this auction for several reasons. Things like the monument upstairs weigh 10,000 pounds. They're 12.5 feet tall and 18 feet long, so they don't fit in my living room. And they have to be cataloged, and the flag has to be passed on to a younger generation. Now, talking about that younger generation, I'm donating a portion of my proceeds from the auction to the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation, which supplies scholarships for the children of today's Marines and law enforcement officers that are killed in action. So that's my way of connecting the Marines of the greatest generation with the Marines of today.
And now we're going to take a little walking tour.
We're going to take a walking tour.
Thank you so much.
Of the battlefield.
Of the battlefield.
And here we have a silver bowl that was given by the officers of the USS Arizona to one of their colleagues who transferred off the ship shortly before the attack on Pearl Harbor. Literally just a couple weeks he got out with his life. These are two soup bowls from the USS Arizona, and you can see right on the bottom of the bowl the name of the ship is stenciled right on there, USS Arizona. And down here on the third shelf down, we have a big bronze ashtray marked USS Arizona WR. WR stands for the officers' wardroom, where the officers drank and had their meals together. And next to it is a launching medal of when the USS Arizona was launched in the Brooklyn Navy shipyard, and the brass that they used to make the medal came from brass from the USS Maine that blew up in Havana Harbor, igniting the Spanish-American War. What irony that the launching medal from one ship came from the other. And here we have silver bosun's whistle from the Arizona, a piece of the ship itself, and a ring marked December 7th, also made out of a piece of the ship. This is a captured Japanese battle flag, overprinted with Remember Pearl Harbor, and it was used to sell victory bonds during the war to raise money for the war effort. Okay. And in this case, we have some Japanese Imperial Navy identification ship models, and the quality of the workmanship on them is absolutely incredible. You see the decks are all natural wood, and even the cannon barrels are hollow. And on the shelf right above it, up here, we have the Japanese recognition model of the famous USS Enterprise. And in a few minutes, I'll show you one of the American battle flags from the USS Enterprise, which is down the hallway. But these are all wartime made ship models. They're not toys, they're kits, but they're absolutely phenomenal pieces of workmanship. We have the American ensign of the USS Enterprise, one of the great ships of World War II. And right below it, we have an ensign that flew on the USS Tang, which was a submarine that fired a defective torpedo that went around in a circle and sunk itself with the loss of most of the men on board. And below here, we have a uniform and medal group in the case next to it of the torpedo man on the USS Tang who fired the fateful torpedo that sunk his own ship. And he had a premonition of his death before he died. He sent everything he owned except one uniform that he had on home to his mother. And sure enough, he pressed the button that made the torpedo go in a circle and killed most of the crew. An incredible story. And so it's the most complete set of a submariner uniform known from World War II because he had this premonition and gathered everything together and sent it home. In this case here, we see the Purple Heart certificate, and the Purple Heart itself. This is a killed in action Purple Heart, meaning that the guy just wasn't wounded, but the act for which he got the medal was an act in which he died. And here's another one of his flags and all of his enlistment papers, a complete set of the paperwork, the medal award documents, and his medals and submarine dolphins. It's an incredible, complete submariner's uniform and medal set. There's no duplicate of it anywhere. This is a 4-foot by 4-foot model of the flag raising, which Felix de Weldon made during the battle. While the battle was still raging on Iwo Jima, he was one of the first to see the famous wire photo of Joe Rosenthal of the flag raising, and as a sculptor immediately realized its importance and sculpted this 4-foot by 4-foot model. Everyone loved the model so much that he was ordered to report to the White House on June 4th, 1945, along with Joe Rosenthal, the photographer that took the picture. And to the left of us over here in a case, we have a photograph of Felix de Weldon. He's behind the statue. And to the right there is photographer Joe Rosenthal. And on the extreme left is President Harry Truman, and you can tell by the curtains that we're in the Oval Office of the White House. And on the top shelf up here, looking down, we have a photograph of Felix de Weldon in his World War II Navy uniform. In that picture, at the time of that picture, he is a painter's mate, 2nd class. But he happened to be a great sculptor who had sculpted the busts of 3 kings of England in a row before he came to the United States. So it was serendipitous that he happened to be standing there at the wire station at the Anacostia Naval Air Station when the famous photograph came over, and immediately realized the importance of it and started sculpting the model, which you see here and over there. A 16 by 20 inch photograph that's actually unique. There's not another one known. And it's autographed to Felix de Weldon, the sculptor of the Iwo Jima monument, with admiration from Joe Rosenthal. Truly extraordinary. The photograph is not dated, but we believe that it dates to June 4th, 1945, because that's the day that both men, Joe Rosenthal and Felix de Weldon, were ordered to report to the White House to meet with President Truman. And it's probable that that's the first time the two of them had met. And if that isn't the exact day of the photograph, it's soon thereafter. But it's a truly historic piece by itself. We have the sculptor's tools that built the Iwo Jima monument, and that also built the 1954 Marine Corps Memorial flag raising monument 10 years later. And going along with the sale of the original Iwo Jima monument are the sculptor's tools that made it, photographs of Felix using the tools, making the monument, and we also have his pencil drawings for the monument and photographs of the 3 surviving flag raisers posing for themselves for the big monument upstairs in Felix's studio. It's like having a Rembrandt and being able to say, oh, by the way, along with the painting, we have Rembrandt's brushes, we have his palette, and his pencil sketches for making it. It's an extraordinary historic group all of its own. Here we have 2 Japanese battle flags captured on Iwo Jima, and these GIs wrote in their names besides this one. Of the 2 of them, this is fascinating. Of the 2 flags, the one on the right is fascinating because it is dated February 23rd, 1945, right here, which happens to be the day of the flag raising. So this Japanese soldier was killed while the American flag was being planted on Mount Suribachi. And in one of the other cases over here, we have a killed in action Purple Heart group of a United States Marine also killed on February 23rd while the flag was being raised. Who knows if these 2 men were fighting with each other. We'll never know. But it's a great example of relics of soldiers killed in battle on the same day at the same time on opposite sides while our flag was being raised. In this case here, on the lower shelf, we have two Japanese Army helmets that were captured at Iwo Jima. One on the right got painted up by the U.S. Marines, and the one on the left is stenciled in Iwo Jima, February 19th, 1945. And February 19th was D-Day on Iwo Jima. That was the day of the invasion. So this Japanese soldier was obviously killed on the beach during the invasion on February 19th, which is today, but 68 years ago. On the next shelf up, we have what's probably one of the greatest pieces of folk art sculpture in American history. It is obviously the Iwo Jima flag raising, carved by some Marines on Iwo Jima in 1945 out of root wood, which is typical of the wood on the island. They don't have trees there. And the rocks that you see in what symbolizes Mount Suribachi at the front of the sculpture are volcanic rocks taken from the top of Mount Suribachi. So it's a fantastic indigenous, on-the-spot, great piece of American folk art.
I'm Kristal Hart, standing in front of a statue defining the ultimate American moment. May we never forget our greatest generation. The auction takes place Friday, February 22nd at 1 p.m. at Bonhams, located at 580 Madison Avenue. Online bidding will be available for this auction. For further info, visit bonhams.com. To bid by phone, call 212-644-9001.